Hi, everybody. Welcome to the next episode of Future Focused CXOs. I have a very interesting guest today, Will Urban. He is the former Chief Revenue Officer for Flexport, and now he's at R7 and Companion Venture Capital. So, without further delay, let me welcome Will to the podcast. Can you introduce yourself?
Thanks, Jay. Thanks for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you. I am, like you said, I've had a long history and career in supply chain. Started with Expeditors International right out of college, which is now a Fortune 500 company. Started at the bottom and worked my way all the way up to managing a large region for the company, reporting in the C-suite there, and worked in various locations around the world for them. That was 25 years. And after that, I took a little time off, and then I was working for a consultancy in San Francisco called OnTap. And I managed all their supply chain portion of the business, consulting clients. And through that, I met the founder and CEO of Flexport, Ryan Peterson, and ended up consulting to him and the COO there at the time, Sana Manders. And it almost turned into a full-time job. And then Ryan said, you might as well join. And I became the chief revenue officer at Flexport after that. And so I spent nearly 4 years there. And during a time of incredible growth, we moved from around a $600 million company to just shy of 5 billion in 3 years, all organically. And so I was responsible for all the market functions. So sales, account management, customer service, marketing, all our external communications. And now I'm part of two venture capital firms. One is R7, which really focuses on hard technology. And then Companion Ventures, which is very focused on early stage SaaS. And a lot of the companies that they are working with are either have a very heavy go-to-market type of product that they're developing and where they're in supply chain. So that's where I really effectively work with founders and help them grow their businesses for both firms, as well as help both those firms vet investments in both of those areas.
Okay, thank you. Glad to have you. What were those key factors you changed from being in supply chain to coming to a venture capital world?
The vast majority of my career, the first 25 years, I worked for a very large public company, right? And I really wasn't involved too much with venture unless our clients were backed by venture capital. And then when I joined Flexport and I was part of the board, obviously when we were public, we had private investors and some smaller ones at the beginning. And then later, as I was working there, some very large ones. So SoftBank, Founders Fund, A16, Shopify, Michael Dell's family fund. And I really had the opportunity, and it was just a really cool opportunity to work with some of these VC partners, whether they sat on their board or their advisors. We just had this large investor community, and they were really great with their time. And I learned a ton from them and got very interested in it. My first year at Flexport, I actually joined Companion because the partners at Companion were good friends with the fellow that ran the consultancy I worked for before Flexport, OnTap. And he thought I'd be a good fit there, and I joined. But it was pretty limited, my time, because I was so involved with Flexport. And then right when I was wrapping up my time with Flexport, there was a partner at R7 that was a friend of mine, and he's no longer with the firm, but he actually introduced me to the partners there, and we just really hit it off. And we realized that there was incredible opportunities in supply chain, but so many people, unless you spent your career in it, like I had, weren't as steeped in knowledge. And it's not that it's rocket science, it's just that I've been doing it for a very long period of time. So I really understand where these opportunities sit in the marketplace, what's feasible, what's not, whether it's a technology play or a hard tech play or both. And that just got me very interested. And as I wound down my time at Flexport and running those big go-to-market campaigns like that, it's a 24/7 fly around the world and open up new markets and lanes. And I really want to focus a little more time on my family. And my wife had started her own business at the same time, and kind of her turn to be the focus there. And so working with both of these venture capital firms gives me a little more autonomy with my time, but I've really enjoyed it and loved it. And so far, and it's been super interesting. It's fun to take all these things I've learned through my career and then help these other companies leverage that knowledge and help them grow. And I've really enjoyed it. And that's why I made the jump. And I think I'll probably be doing this for the rest of my career, at least so far.
I'm great. I'm glad you found that. But one very important question comes to my mind is, how do I really balance between family and work? Right now, you were in that position. Now your wife is into that position.
It's a great question. I will tell you that I've learned a lot about myself and how to balance that in maybe the last 6-7 years. When I started with Expeditors, I was very young and the company was growing very fast. And really, if you were willing to put in the hours, the time, being flexible about where you live, because I lived in multiple locations for expeditors I was willing to move. I really dug in and worked a ton of hours. And unfortunately, I probably developed some bad habits of that, where I just had no separation between family time and my personal time and work. And I'm a person that loves my work, but you do need to turn it off every once in a while and change your focus on the people that you love and the people around you, your friends and all that. And probably the biggest reason I left Expeditors after 25 years, I was just burnt out. And my wife convinced me, okay, take some time off and think about the next thing you can do. People thought I was nuts walking away from that job. They were very generous with me. It wasn't about money or any of those things at all, right? It was just about what kind of lifestyle change. So I quit. And then we decided, okay, we're going to take the family to Europe for a month and just travel around, the four of us. And that was in the fall. My oldest was getting ready to go to college. We were living in California at the time, and she was going to go to school in Seattle. And we thought, okay, this might be the last time I get to really spend a lot of time with her. And then my youngest was getting ready to start his freshman year in high school. And we go to Europe, and I didn't know what to do with myself for the first week. It was really hard. And then once I got past that first week, I realized, hey, I need to be in the moment with my family and just really enjoy this time. And I slipped into a great mode of not having a schedule for about 7-8 months. Even after the trip, we just come home, I take my kids to school, I went to all their practices, I hung around the house with my wife. It was really great to rethink things. And I realized that going forward, I had to have this balance. And that's just for me personally. It's not a judgment on anyone else, how they work or how they run their lives. I figured out what worked for me and my family and the people around me. And so I've gotten better at it. And listen, I can get so hyper-focused on things that it's easy for me to slip back into that workaholic kind of mode. And my wife's really good at setting me straight and giving me a little tough love there when I go that direction. The great thing about working at Flexport was it's definitely a more of a lax environment in terms of it didn't matter where I lived. The executive team was dispersed all over the place. Headquarters were San Francisco. I was in Seattle. The COO was in Portland. The CFO was in Dallas. We had leadership around the world. And you're able to be really effective, but also not have a hard-coded schedule or office to go into. And then when it got to the point where I thought I'd grown to where the team that I was leading, they just didn't need me as much anymore. And the right change for the company didn't make sense for me. It was just time for me to step out of it. And now that balance is super important to me, especially in the work I'm doing now. And the great thing about working with these two VCs, and I do some advisory work and I'm on a couple boards, is that I can really design my own schedule around that and take time to do this. We'll talk with you. If I want to cut out a little bit early for the afternoon, I can do that. Quite a lot, but it's more on my time and schedule and is very much focused around my family versus my family being, kind of worked around my work. And so I think I found that place, but it took me years to get there, Jay, like years. I
resonate with so much because I come from a very similar stress, right? 25 years I worked for a company and I was also stressed out like you. And my wife also used to work. And one day, and this was so bad, incidental, I was not feeling well. I went to the doctor. We checked. Everything was bad. You name it, it was bad. Cholesterol, blood pressure, sugar, you name it, it was there. And I came home and I was so depressed. My wife said, what happened? I said, this is what happened, right? Real lab results will come, but fingerprint tells you a lot about everything. And that is the time we really thought through. But you have a great wife and a great partner. I'm also very blessed with that. So she said, you can take it easy. And very similar situation. My son was about to go to college. My daughter was a freshman in high school, right? And I said, oh my God, I had to pay for college. She said, we have the savings. We can manage this. You don't need to stress so much. And I left the job. Nobody believed that you are doing so well. The CEO of a $5 billion company knows you, right? Used to come home and he also said, what happened, right? It's not about you, not about the company, it's about me. I burnt out and I really need some time off. And he thought, oh, take some time off, you will come back. But then I thought, and then I went into this business. So I still work 18 hours, but as you said, it's on my time. I work around my family time rather than my family trying to work around my schedule. And the biggest change was within 3 months, my daughter was like 11 years or 12 years old that time. She came and said, Dad, you look so happy nowadays. Out of the blue, she said, think about it, how the stress also transfers to the family at the end of the day.
You realize what an effect you have on the people around you, right? And they immediately notice it when you're in a better place. I've had some younger people ask me, I'd like to do the same thing. I said, part of it is you got to earn it. You got to get to a spot.
We have bills to pay, man. You cannot just
Yeah, exactly. You've got to earn it. And as you get older, People value your subject matter expertise you have for being in a space successfully for a long period of time. And that's very valuable to a lot of people. And so you take that and you monetize it for yourself a little bit, and you can make quite a career out of it. I couldn't have done that 10 years ago. I needed to have the jobs at Expeditors and have the experience at Flexport to be where I'm at right now. So that's a blessing and very fortunate thing. And then I think the other thing that always strikes me with this is I was so focused on the next job, the next promotion, or closing the next deal, proving yourself to everybody. And now I just don't care about any of that stuff anymore. I don't really care about the title because people who know me and know where I'm at and what I've done, the resume speaks for itself, I think. And then I don't know if it's the same for you, but I'm not so worried about any of those things anymore. And so that takes a lot of the pressure off yourself too. And you realize things that make you happy tend to make you more successful, right?
There is a saying, right, which says that when I was young and smart, I wanted to change the world. But when I grew older, I became wise and I never cared about the world. But let me come back to your subject matter expertise, because there is so much I wanted to ask. Now, since you are into the venture capital world, you have such a nice experience into supply chain. Give us some insights into how do you typically assess a deal? What do you look for?
I think that's really the role I play in both places, especially at R7. One of the partners has a lot of experience like I do, but he's wrapping up his career. He's actually almost retired a little bit, does a little work with the firm. When I sit down and I talk to founders, they understand that I just got a lot of practical business experience of scaling companies. Right? And actually all that was my plan. It was just kind of circumstance where I was at. I was moving up the ranks at Expeditors, having various jobs, and as they grew in scope and size and responsibility. And same thing at Flexport, they were all full stack responsibility jobs that were literally in the billions of dollars in terms of responsibility. And so I get all the things that it takes to get a company running. You might have a great product, but you still have to deal with people and finance and sales and keeping all your customers happy and all those things coming at you. And so many of these founders are brilliant people and they're younger, most of them. So they don't have a lot of that just practical business experience. It doesn't mean they don't get it or they can't do it. I used to work for this guy at Expeditors who's a former CFO, and he was wonderful to me and he coached me on all kinds of things. And he used to say all the time that experience is what you get when everything goes wrong. There's not a truer statement on the planet. And so what I tell a lot of founders, they'll ask me, how do you know to do that? And I'm like, well, hey, because I screwed it up or something went sideways on us. And we learned through it. And here's how I approach that again if I were you, right? Knowing what I know. And so I really don't go into any of these things trying to think that I'm smarter than them or know anything different. It's just, yeah, I've been there, done a lot of these things, and they can call and ask me, hey, how would you work through this issue? Or I don't understand how to deal with this person. And some of the partners at these firms, they haven't done a lot of that work. And at R7, they've done some of that stuff, but they've also just been in the investing world a lot. But they're really sharp and astute, and they're great business people. But that's the role I play there. And one of the things I'm always thinking about is we're talking to founders, especially who are pitching this. And what I'm learning to do is usually there's the technology part of it or whatever they're building, there's pretty much a use case for it by the time we're involved. And that part is okay. What I'm always thinking about is, can that person lead? Does it seem like they can manage multiple things at once? Can they take feedback, not get defensive? How do they treat their employees and other people? I'm thinking about, is this thing scales? If we're going to put another 10 or $15 million into it, and they think they're going to scale in the next couple of years to 100, 200 million, even bigger company, is this the right person to do that? And they don't necessarily have the experience, but do they have the potential to be able to lead? And that's a huge part of investing, right? It's not just technology. It's like, who's the captain of the ship and is he or she able to lead? And I just know those things from really great mentors and leaders that have coached me. And it always came back to those things. You can have the greatest product in the world or the greatest idea, but if you can't lead the team through it, be open-minded, take feedback, be willing to change your mind every once in a while, you're probably not going to make it. So those are the things I land about those teams and seen it all, been there. Like I said, had a lot of that quote unquote experience, which means things go sideways on you. You can quote a gentleman named Jordan Gates. He was the CFO at Expeditors from the majority of the time I was there, and he's the one who used to say that all the time.
No, but I think I have a follow-up question. Most of the products are brilliant. Technology-wise, you can make them wonders, and you don't need to invent an iPhone all the time, right?
Right.
Look at what happened to WhatsApp, which came so late in the game when there were like hundreds of messaging apps, right? Look at what happened to Google, which came way later when there were like hundreds of other search engines in the space. But my follow-up question is, how important or how much weightage and how much due diligence you do looking at the culture of the company, right? How much importance do you give to that?
Yeah, most of the time, the due diligence piece I'm doing is in those areas that I just talked about. So kind of the overall leadership business side of it, as well as anything specific where supply chain might touch it. And or the other big part is the go-to-market strategy, whether it's supply chain based or SaaS or whatever. I've been deploying these big go-to-market programs or running big sales programs for a long period of time. I think the biggest thing to me is, and my partners might feel differently, but I think they might say the same thing, how they treat cash. Say some venture firm, you do a round, your Series A or something, you raise another 50 million. How do they treat that cash? In the sense that, I'm not saying don't spend it or don't have a nice office or those kind of things. There's the difference between frugal and being cheap. Cheap is bad because that means you're probably not investing. Frugal just means that you're taking seriously the fact that all these investors have put their trust in you and given you a large sum of their money. And you have to be a good steward of that money. And you really want your investors, your LPs, to be behind you, exhibit that. And it doesn't mean you won't make mistakes, and it doesn't mean everything's going to work out. And all these people are business people, and they understand that there's inherent risk with investing, and they understand that everything's not going to work out. But if they feel like a founder is really, or that CEO, whoever's managing that money, is really doing so with thinking about it, treating it like it was their own money. One, I just think that those people are generally better business people and more successful. And two, you've got the might of all these investors of people and all their contacts and everything behind you to help you grow the business. The ones I've run into that kind of have a cavalier attitude with the money, hey, we can just raise more money, they just don't seem to be as successful. And I think what it also does, it sets a really bad tone for their team. And again, I'm not saying being cheap, I'm not saying don't buy everybody lunch or not being in a nice office building, but the more frugal people that are thinking about, I need to keep putting money back into the business, I need to make sure that I'm taking care of my employees. That's way more important than anything fancy or crazy or whatever. And I've seen some people do some really crazy stuff with some cash. So that's on the due diligence side. That's one of the bigger pieces. I think the other one is there's kind of two things that are symbiotic with each other to make any startup successful. One is you got to have a great product because then you have nothing to sell. And is it really as good as you think? And does it really have a place in the marketplace, right? And so when we're looking at investments, we're also asking who are your potential customers or current customers. Spend a lot of time talking to them. Like, why did you buy? How is this differentiated in the marketplace? What is it about it that you think is going to help you grow your business? The second part is they can have a great product and they know all that stuff, but if they have no way how to sell it or talk about it, they're going to have a really hard time getting anybody to buy it. And I just ran across one the other day where this young founder who I really like just could not really articulate, at least maybe I just didn't understand it, the value. And he actually ended up having me talk to one of his investors. She articulated it way better to me. And I'm like, oh, I get it. But then my next thought was, man, if this guy can't sell it or articulate it as the founder, how's he ever going to grow this company? And he's either got to learn to do that or he's got to surround himself with people that are really professional go-to-market people that can take that idea and put it in the marketplace to differentiate people. And maybe I can help with that, or maybe they need to hire, but is that person open to that concept and do they realize that about themselves? Right. And so the kind of the next step in our due diligence, which isn't spreadsheet due diligence, but is that person, do they realize they've got this kind of hole in their game? Are they willing to acknowledge it? And then more importantly, can they either teach themselves or take feedback to get themselves there personally and or realize maybe that's not my strength. I'm going to go hire a great go-to-market leader to help me grow this organization because I just know that's not what I'm good at. To me, we do all the financial due diligence, look at all the numbers, cash flow, payables, how they're doing with working capital, all those things. But it's those sort of softer things of leadership that really tell me whether someone's got it or not. And I have been fortunate enough to work for absolutely terrific leaders that I've learned from. Right? People mentored me and cared about me and really taught me how to be a great leader because they were great leaders. And then when I was at Flexport, where I was more the leader, right, in the C-suite, one of the great things I got to do was on our board was this gentleman named Bob Swan, who's the ex-CEO of Intel, and he is a partner now at Andreessen Horowitz, A16, and he sat on our board. And he gave up so much of his time to me. And he is just a humble, down-to-earth guy, but a brilliant leader. And I would run things by him, and he would give me really direct feedback. That's a bad idea, and here's why. Or that's a great idea, you should run with that. Or did you consider this? Or talk to this guy who's a friend of mine. And I think the reason he gave me time is I was very open to feedback, and I could take it without being defensive. And I'm not saying I could have done that earlier in my career, right? But now this is Bob Swan, former CEO of Intel. He's willing to give me this advice. Hey, can that founder, as we're doing our due diligence, do the same thing? Are they open enough for it? And then I think those are the most important things with evaluating a company, if it's got a chance to really grow. And are we going to risk our LP's dollars in investing there, right?
Nice explanation. What I saw is there is a science to investing. Right? All the numbers, product, market fitment, right? But there is a lot of art of doing a due diligence for investment, right? And you're very good at that art part of it because of that soft skills, something that cannot be quantified by a number necessarily. And that's wonderful because that is where normally our decisions go wrong, right? And that is where our feeling about statistical numbers versus gut feeling comes in. I've seen many times that in gut, I don't feel this is a good deal for us, right? But for the money or for whatever statistical reason, we go into it. And after 3 months, we realize, oh my God, what did I sign up for? So that also can be one part. So thank you for bringing that out. I think that's so important for all the founders also to look at themselves, do reflection, saying that if I'm going for investment, I also need to be ready for this. I need to be ready for change. I need to know my blind spots. I need to be open to cover or hire people to cover them. The second important question I wanted to ask you in this whole space is you spoke a lot about leadership, right? You said you learned a lot from very good leaders and you look for that kind of leadership skills also in a founder, right? So tell me 4 or 5 good traits of a leader.
One of the people that mentored me used to say this all the time, and I think it's so true. Are you a leader that eats first or eats last? Meaning, is your own personal success and gain more important than the team and the people that you're responsible for? And what I learned with that was 2 things. It's like, if you're a leader of a company or a leader of a big organization within a company, if your number one mission is to make the people that you're responsible for incredibly successful, you will become even more successful. When I was at Flexport, I had 12 direct reports. They all had huge P's and L's and lots of people reporting to them. But they knew that my number one job is to make sure that they're successful. They always had an open door to me. And these people were really capable people. So when they came to me with a problem or a concern, or they needed just to talk through something, I would drop everything I would do and make time for them, because it was pretty serious because they were so capable, right? So they really needed help. They needed advice. And I didn't sometimes have all the answers. So we'll figure out how to deal with it collectively. And then what you realize when you do that is a lot of personal fulfillment was watching them be successful, like them getting promoted or making more money or closing a big deal or growing their region. And you truly get vested in their success. And you take a lot of pride in those individual successes, right? And I especially experienced that at Expeditors because the people I work for, they really cared about me deeply. And that doesn't mean it was all roses, man. Sometimes they were kicking my ass, because someone who really cares about you is not going to give you the thumbs up, good job, buddy, all the time. And I think that's really important. The other thing with leadership, and one of the things I really respect about Ryan Peterson, is that this whole idea that leaders can't change their mind is just stupid. Things evolve constantly. And if you're not listening to your people and willing to change your mind, or maybe think, I got it wrong, that to me is not a great leader. One of the things I respect about Ryan is you can say, hey, I think that's the wrong idea, the wrong way to do it, and he'll listen to you. You need to do it respectfully because he's a CEO, right? You do it quietly, closed doors. And sometimes he agreed and sometimes he didn't agree. But one, I always felt heard working for him, and I knew he valued my opinion. 2, he would change his mind and do something differently if he thought it was warranted, but he'd always listen. And sometimes he'd go, hey, I heard you, we're still going to do it this way. And that's when supporting your boss, you need to go, okay, great. As long as you're not being asked to do anything unethical, then I go out and execute on what Ryan wanted me to do. And you would think it was my idea, not Ryan's, right? Because I'm just going to support him all day long. But great leaders can change their mind, listen to feedback. And I think the last thing I would just say, I struggled with this at Flexport because in my last few roles at Expeditors, because all of a sudden you've got 1,000 people in your org or 1,500 people in your org. You just can't be accessible to everyone all the time, right? So what I really learned to do was make sure that my messaging was really on point. So people felt like they knew what I was doing and I was as transparent as much as I possibly could be. Another great trait of Ryan Peterson is extremely transparent with the team on a global basis about what's going on. So people trust what's going on in the organization. Even maybe if they don't agree, at least they know what's going on. They don't want to feel like they're in the dark. And great leaders communicate as transparently as they can. And you can't necessarily let every detail out to everybody all the time. And I think people understand that. But people want to know where the company's going, how we're doing, what's wrong, what's working. And then if there's really a problem or they really need to talk to somebody, they can reach that CEO or executive person because they will open their doors if something's really wrong. And there was that kind of open door policy leadership style at Expeditors, and Ryan very much embraced it at Flexport, and Sana is number 2 there for years. And I think great leaders do those 3 things. They're very vested in the success of their team, find joy in that. You find personal joy in seeing your team do well. You can take feedback and change your mind. And people are not afraid to bring you the feedback because they know that you'll be open-minded about it. And then the last thing is you got to figure out, no matter how big you are, how many people reporting to you, how do you be as open and transparent to those around you so they feel good about what's going on and feel like they have a voice.
Such a great point. Thank you so much again, Will. I have one last question for you. What advice would you give to people who are in their mid-careers who really want to accelerate, get to where you are from two perspectives. One, not have their family go around their schedule, but they go around family schedule. And second, if they want to really get into the C-suite, what advice would you give to them?
On the first one, I think when you're in the middle of your career and you're trying to get up to that executive level, there are sacrifices you have to make. I don't know if you follow like Scott Galloway, but Scott Galloway's an economist. He's got a podcast. He puts out a weekly newsletter. One of the things he says all the time is, if I had to give any advice to a younger person, it's find a great partner in life. And so I've been fortunate enough to have that person in my life. I think at times if she could have killed me and hid the body and got away with it, she would have, because I'm not the easiest person to live with. But that made all that easier. And she understood when I was putting in the hours I was and doing the things I was doing. And also would give me really direct feedback when I was taking it too far. I wasn't afraid to tell me what was going on. And so I think that partner thing is really important. I think the second part is be willing to step out of your comfort zone and take on new challenges and things, even the stuff that's not necessarily super sexy. It's just the stuff that's impactful to the business or the people that you work for, and really know the details of whatever that is, and not wait for things to be told to do, but make suggestions about things. Hey, I've been thinking about this, Jay, and the meeting you had with me yesterday, and I think if we went forward on these things, you're just showing those initiatives that you really care and are listening and you want to move the company forward. And I do believe in the workplace, just in general, it's getting easier because companies are realizing that if you don't give people a little more leeway or a little more flexibility so they can be focused on their families, you're going to lose those people. So I think in general, companies need to adapt, because if you don't, you're not going to survive and be competitive. But the other part about that is, this is just a really simple tactical things where we've got family calendars, and I'm always looking at the family calendar versus the work calendar. And so I don't double book myself over things, and the important family stuff takes precedence over the work stuff. And most people I find are pretty understanding about it. Like I say, yeah, you want me in this meeting in Miami, but my son's got this thing with school. Most people will help you either change the schedule, or in today's world, you can figure out how you can attend a meeting remotely. You can work around it. It's really being organized. And then honestly, part of getting into the C-suite for me, or getting into some of these roles, is like there's two fluke things. One is I met Peter Rose when I was 22 years old. He was the founder of Expediter. I think I made the most of the opportunity they gave me. And then the second was how I got to know Ryan. So once you're given that opportunity, you realize what it is and make the most of it. And no one owes you anything.
Oh, wow. That is such a powerful statement.
Yeah, that's one thing I'm really pushing with my kids. My oldest, who graduated from college, and she's in biotechnology, and she's working at a cancer research center, and she's applying to med schools and all this. Going from a college student where you're pampered in this circle, this little bubble, and then going out and just dealing with some office politics and dealing with some things that are going on that you and I, when everybody can laugh about now, she had a hard time navigating that a little bit. I'm like, hey, you got to realize no one owes you a thing. You got to make your own way. It doesn't mean you need to be a jerk or be ruthless, but you've got to make your own breaks and raise your hand and say you want things and be a little bit aggressive in a good way. Again, I don't believe you have to tear people down or trample people to be successful, but you got to say you want things and you got to go for it.
I think my kids are also at the same place now. My son will start working next year, and he's already doing internships and other things, but they will get exposed to the reality of corporate world, as I say all the time. So thank you for this. I think I really enjoyed the conversation. Thanks for spending so much time with me.
Yeah, it's great talking to you. Thank you.